Okay, so today I'm going to talk about exposure. So exposure is a really important factor when it comes to developing our mental strength, our resilience, and improving the mental processes that we have that are associated around dealing with threat or dealing with discomfort, adversity, challenge, these sort of things. So exposure itself is something that we go through from sort of very early stages of life. We expose ourselves, or we're allowed to be exposed to certain things. We develop these capacities, and then we have tools, we have better cognitive function and processes around dealing with these things, and we have better models for sort of understanding and predicting. So when we allow ourselves to be exposed to certain things, or when we go through life and we sort of choose to expose ourselves to certain discomforts, then there's a number of things there's a number of positive changes that happen on the back of that. So it increases our capacity to deal with future threat or future challenges that are similar. And there's a certain level of transference across from one domain into another domain. So for me, an easy example, or sort of an example that I'll commonly go back to, is my time in the military. So when I was first exposed to sort of combat or gunfighting, or sort of what's considered a contact with the enemy, the first time I do it, I have a very low capacity to deal with that threat or that level of challenge because I've never been exposed to it. And then the more I do it, over time, I learn how to cope, or I develop or increase my capacity to cope with that level of pressure or threat. And the more I do it, the higher my tolerance or higher my capacity goes to that level of threat becomes. And then I sort of, after a certain amount of exposures, I can deal with these things and I'm able to function at a more optimal level just because I've increased my capacity by consistently exposing myself to it and learning how I go when I'm under that level of pressure. And it also increases our familiarity. So when we get into familiarity, it's just around our understanding of what's going on, our understanding of what it means to us, okay, whether that is a threat that we need to worry about, and then what options are available to us to solve that problem or get through that threat. And we also develop some processes that we can use in the future when we're exposed to similar sort of threats, or that will transfer into other threats, so that we have better tools for when we go into the future. And we also have a better understanding of what we're capable of as we move forward into our future. Okay, it also gives us the ability, or we learn to lean into our challenges, because the more we expose ourselves to challenges, the more comfortable we get with them, and the more that we lean in through consistent exposures, and then we develop our ability to sort of confront challenge as a skill set and as a capacity, and that improves the more we do it, and we get a better set of tools around that as we move forward into future challenges. Okay, we also develop the choice, so the choices that we have, and I've spoken about choices before around choosing to accept challenge and choosing to move into things. The more we expose ourselves, the more that we improve our ability to make these choices. We can also learn a lot about ourselves, so if we allow ourselves to be exposed to these challenges, then we move into a learning mindset around how we actually go through it, how we see information, and how we develop and grow on the other side of that. And we also learn a lot about how we respond, and the more we respond, or the more we're exposed, and the more we understand about how we respond, the better we are in learning how to regulate our response, so we don't really get overcome by negative emotions. We can regulate, and we can start to change the way we see information within our environment, so we're seeing more of the information that we need to solve these problems. And we also become more efficient at shifting from that sort of threat bias or threat focus back into the task relevant information. So this has also been supported within some of the research. So there's research out there, and you may have heard or come across this, is people that had high phobia towards spiders, so arachnophobia. Within about 2 hours, they went from not being able to stand in a room within 10 feet of spiders to physically touching them. So they progressed their ability through just increasing the progressive overload or progressive exposures that they had, so that they were comfortable with each stage. And within 2 hours, they were able to touch these spiders. And when they did brain scans on them, they also found that there were changes in the activity in the areas that were associated with our sort of threat and fear response. And there were changes in the way, or changes in the activity of the areas of the brain that look for fear-based or threatening-based information as compared to task-relevant information. So when we choose, or we allow ourselves to be exposed to things that we're uncomfortable with, or challenges, adversity within our environment, and we do it in a continued progressive manner that's appropriate to our capacity or the level that we're at, we can develop all these skills, and we can get the cognitive changes that we need so that we're able to take on more discomfort, challenge, threat in the future, so that we're not so worried about things. As opposed to when we avoid these things, there's a number of negative events that happen, or a cascade of negative events. So If we can learn to actually enjoy preparation through exposure or exposure for preparation, then we can develop all the skills that we need, we can improve our capacity for threat, and we can start to move through life worried less about the discomfort and the challenges that we're going to face. So I hope that helps with another understanding of how, or a bit more of understanding of how exposure, or allowing ourselves to have exposure or sort of confront our threats, how that's going to help us improve the way we function, and that's going to give us better outcomes as we go through our life.